In this lesson, we're going to be covering the aggregation pipeline. And in MongoDB, the aggregation pipeline is a way of running a series of commands in order to get aggregate functions. There are some aggregate functions outside of here, but the aggregate pipeline has become a very easily manipulable, easy to understand way to get aggregate results. So please make sure that your VirtualBox is up and running. Go ahead and make sure you can SSH into your box. And at this point, go ahead and just run Mongo. And that way we know things are up and running. Now, for the aggregation pipeline, the lesson should have had a file called locationchange.txt.zip. I downloaded it to my directory here, and if you open it up, it has a whole bunch of update commands to the location collection. So hit Command A and then Command C to copy it all. Now over here, we need to go ahead and use the ADB database. If we do a show collections, we'll see that there already is a location collection. This is going to perform updates to that collection, which we're going to be using in this lesson. So just hit Command V. It's not only pasting it, it is running all of those updates. You can see after each command there is a write result. This is one of the cool things about working in terminal. And once you're done with that, go ahead and just put that file away, and then we're just going to be working in the ADB database for this lesson. So, the aggregation framework allows us to break large aggregate functions into smaller, connected, easy-to-use tasks. And I put the address in here. It may have changed, but it's to the MongoDB manual where it has the aggregation pipeline in there. You can also just Google MongoDB aggregation pipeline if you need additional help. But inside of the aggregation framework, there's an aggregate command. And inside of those commands, there's group, average, sum, min, max, project. Everyone wants to say project. It's actually project, like a video projector. Match and unwind. And these are only a few of the aggregate framework features we're going to be going over. So let's go ahead and say we want to get a count of all restaurants grouped by city. Well, if we just want to get a count of all restaurants, and I know I say restaurants, I do mean locations. Let's take a look. Let's do db.location.find.pretty. So we can just get a look at the data. And what we'll see here is a whole bunch of documents I was able to download from searching for business licenses. Anytime you open a business in the United States, in any of the 50 states, you have to register that business and get some type of licensing for that. When you do register your business, this does become publicly available. I downloaded it, I changed some information, and then I went ahead and also ran it against the Yelp API. So you'll see in here stuff like a Yelp ID, I believe there's a Yelp URL, here we go, a rating. The rating is fictional. Please don't change your dining or purchasing habits based on my ratings. A price, which is also a number between 1 and 5. And then a longitude and latitude, which actually is close to the actual address. There was some issues with doing that, but they are all valid longitude and latitude coordinates. So now that we've kind of had a look at this data, we'll see there is a type in here. And most of them are restaurants, but not all of them. Some of them are like American, some of them are vegetarian. But there is gastropubs. There are some in here that ended up being like oral surgeons. So just for a note, whenever I refer to restaurants, I'm actually asking for locations. So please don't make that confusion. Now, if I wanted to get a count of all the locations, what I actually can do is use that old count that we learned in the first week of this class. And we have almost 16,000 locations in here. Now, if I want to go ahead and get a count broken up by city, what I can do is say db.location.aggregate. and there's an open and close parenthesis. And in there, we have a $group command. The ID is city. When you're using the group command, in SQL, we usually said group by city. In Mongo, with the aggregate command, it's group underscore ID is always going to be there. I think there's a few cases where we'll switch it, but for now, note that that will always be here in the group command, and $city. And what this means is we're going to group by city, and then along with the city, we're going to get the count. Now the count, I'm going to say sum1. And what it means is, let's say we find the city of Miami. It's going to grab the count for Miami and sum1, which means add 1. But the next time we find Miami, it's going to go ahead and sum another 1, so that would be 2 and 3 and so forth. So that's achieving the count. Now I went ahead and copied these over to a text file so I can copy and paste them exactly, and we don't have to deal with my sloppy typing and syntax errors. But if I go ahead and I run this, what we're going to get are the cities, which are now cast as ID, and the count. Count, Beltsville has 2, Dunedin has 9, Windler Manors has 12, Lighthouse Point has 5. So what we're getting out is the city. We're casting it as an ID. Remember, ID is usually is going to be the primary key and always the unique value, even when we're inside of an aggregate function. And then we go ahead and get the count. So this is how you would go ahead and get a count group by in Mongo. Now, we can add a sort onto here, and what's really great about this aggregate framework is what we're going to do is, instead of just passing it the group, we're going to make it an array. So now that it's an array of commands, they're going to run first one, then second one, then third one, just like the MongoDB commands run left to right. So here we're still going to get that group by city and get the sum. And then I'm going to say let's sort by the ID field. And the reason is, when we ran just the group, you could see the ID field is now the city. We've cast the city value as ID. So now when we say sort by ID, 1 is of course ascending. What that means is we're going to put the A's first, and then eventually the B's, and so on and so forth. Now if we were to reverse that and make it a -1, what we're able to do now is put the Z's on top, Yulee, Winter Park, Washington, and then it will go backwards in reverse alphabetical order. But a good way to think of the aggregate framework, or the pipeline, is that we have an array of commands, and it's always going to be the output of one going to another. So what you can do is write one command, like the group, see the output, and then say, oh, I need a sort, and put the sort on there. And then after that, you can do more work on top of that. So here's how we do it with the negative. Okay, here's how we would get an average instead of just a count. So here, I want the average rating grouped by city. And average rating is just a label I came up with. It's not really anything from the database. $average is the function average. And $rating actually refers to the rating in the document. What I'm going to do is, let me open up Mongo Chef and connect I'll put this down to the side here. But what I do want to do is open up that location collection and show you, let's just jump over to the table view for a moment, that over here we were getting the average $ rating. It is a little confusing on why there's a $ in here, but whenever you're using it inside of a group command, the column we're referring to, whether it's $city or $rating, is referring to the rating column and the city column. I don't have a good explanation on why there's a $ in front of it. It's just the way they did it. So let me go ahead and take that command over here, put a couple enters so we can space it, and this should get us the average rating per city. And you see here Mount Airy has a 3.5, Beltsville has a 2.7, this place has a 3.66666 going all the way down. As you can see, Mungo likes to be very precise if it's capable of doing that. Okay, next one. So we've seen the sum, which we can use for a count, and we've seen the average, but we can also compute min and max. So in this one, I'm going to go ahead and get the average rating, the count, the min, and the max rating grouped by city. And once that's done, again, it feeds that result into the sort command. I'm going to sort by ID ascendingly. So let me copy those commands. And that got quite large, so let me make this wider. And what we see is there's a place like, well, these all have one count. Let's look at this guy. There's actually 4 of them. The minimum rating is 3.5. The maximum is 4. And the average rating, if we were to put those together, is 3.875. And that makes sense. This one I kind of skipped, so we can look at it, but there's only one of them. So the count is 1, the minimum's 5, the maximum's 5, so of course the average would be 5. So we can compute multiple things at once. Just know that whatever is in the first field here, that ID field, that is what we're grouping by. Now, cool thing we can do is we can actually save and export the results from a query. So let's go ahead and say we do run a query, and right here we're getting the average rating per city grouped by the average rating descending. And I want to go ahead and save it. Well, I could just say var, declare a variable, I'm going to call it aggregate cursor, ag cursor, equals to, and then the command. By the way, we have the term cursor use. Cursor is, the best way to put it is a remedial array. It's an array we can loop through, but we can't specifically say, get me the value in the 3rd position. So it's sort of like remedial. You can't quite do as much as an array, but it's what gets returned from a database when you do a query. And that's true for Mungo, but it's also true for SQL. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And it comes back, well, in previous times when we've declared a variable, if I type that variable name and hit enter, we get the results. And you can see these guys all got an average rating of 5. So it's safe to go shopping there. All right. Once we have that, though, it is all of the data from that query is stored in, again, that variable, ag cursor. So there are cool things we can do with that, like save it. I can say db.agdata, which is just a new collection, insert, and I'm going to say take the ag cursor and convert it to an array. Okay, so let's do that. So before I do that, let me do this. Let me do show collections. And we see we have these 4 collections. I'm going to do an insert. And what happens when we insert into a new or non-existent collection? It gets created. And what I'm inserting it is telling it take the value from ag cursor, which is the value of this query, transform it into an array, and pass that to insert. So what that means is it just did 543 inserts. So now if I do db.agdata.find.pretty, here's all the data, and it's permanently now saved to that collection. That's really nice that we can go ahead and run a query and save the results for later, or we can actually perform a query, save the data, and then perform more queries on that data. So if we wanted to perform more queries on this, in SQL we would have perhaps created a view. In Mungo we could just create a temporary collection, save our data, and then run queries on this. And of course you could hit it for more. I think it's, shows you the first 10 or 15. Another thing you can also do is you can actually export this now to a flat file. Tools like this, we can now go ahead and let's just hit refresh here. Refresh all. There's ag data. Right click on it and there's an export collection. So you can actually now export this data, I believe, to a CSV file, or you can export it to a text file with JSON documents in it. Okay. Next one I want to talk about is the match command. Match works just like find. So, in its most remedial usage, I could say aggregate framework, match where the city is Miami, and then at the end make it pretty. And of course, this is going to get all of these cities of Miami. Now, we can do the same thing with a find, but what we do with a match, though, is integrate it in with the aggregate framework with the group command and perhaps other commands. So now I'm saying do a match of the city of Miami, then give me the average rating, and we're not grouping by the city, we're grouping by the type. So the Chinese food, the Italian food, the American food, all the different foods, give us the average and the sum of that, and then do a sort. So now if I do this, we get, there are one church, but it has a rating of 5, one Lebanese, one cosmetic surgeon, and most of these are all 1. So let me type it, and we'll get some more records. Here we go. There's a fitness and instruction as a category. There's 2 of them with an average rating of 4.5. Oh, there's 6 places that serve comfort food. Don't we all need that? And they have a rating of that, 4.6 something. So you notice now we can go through the individual steps, and we can actually do them as we need to, meaning maybe I'll do the match first, see all the records. Then I'll add on the group, and I'll go ahead and get the results. And then I'll be, oh, okay, now we need to sort it. You can do it in steps, unlike in SQL where you need to write the whole statement at once when you're computing group bys. With this, you can go ahead and sort it as you go. I find it a lot more, you can break it down to the nitty-gritty, more detailed. So here's another way of doing it. I want to get the same results as before, but I want to go ahead and remove some entries. So I'm actually only interested in Dade County. So what I'm going to do is do a match where the city is Miami, get those results, then get a match where the county is Dade, get those results, compute my average and count, then get rid of everyone whose count is less than or equal to 3, then do a sort, and then do a limit. So inside of these square brackets, that array can contain as many steps as needed. So now, when I run this query, I have 6 comfort food locations, 4 food delivery services, 4 venues, 7 fruits and vegetables, and 23 caterers inside of Dade County, Miami. So that is how you do it. Of course, you can add different group bys and then more matches and just order it however you need to get your result. The project command uses, well, it lets you go ahead and almost alias columns. So let's go through an example. If I go ahead, say, here and get the aggregate, we're still going to get the city of Miami. And then, instead of getting the entire record, I can pick the columns I'm interested in, meaning I want the name, I want the type, I don't want the ID. The ID is the only field you can say no on, because the ID is always brought in by default. You have to say no on ID. If you say yes on ID, it's like, of course, I know that. It throws an error. And then the city, and then limit 5. So what project does, sort of like aliasing, it lets you pick parts of the full document. Here we're just going to get the name, the city, and the type, and it's leaving out the ID. If I was to run that same statement and I didn't say exclude ID, what would happen is, of course, the ID gets included by default. So the ID field is the only one we can use with a 0. Otherwise, with a 1, you specify the types you do want. Now, this may seem a little remedial, but we can also relabel stuff. Meaning, instead of just saying include the name 1, the type 1, we say we can go ahead, and if we look over here, we do have a column called price. I want to include the price, but I want to call it fee. So we say fee, and in single double quotes, $price. So now is when I'm doing the aliasing portion. And instead of getting price, I get the word fee. So project also lets us relabel columns or alias them. And it did come from the concept of a projector, where you pass it through a lens and it kind of manipulates it. Here's another example. We're still going to match for Miami. I'm going to project the ID as the city and then the name as the name. So let's see what this comes up with. What we get now is the ID of the city, name, Miami, which is over and over again, Miami. And then we get the name of the name field from the, where is it? Name. Here we go. From that array, that collection. But we can do a little more than just that. Here, I'm going to say, let's again get Miami. I'm going to do a group by the type. And I'm not getting any results. I'm just saying group by the types. So technically, this is going to just return the unique types. And then I'm going to project the ID as a 0. Interesting, isn't that right? A little different. And then I'm going to project $ID, which is this value, which is type, as type, and do a sort. That looks a little confusing, but I want to show you the results. What this will do is give us a whole bunch of documents with the unique types, and I should erase the first one, I apologize, of the collection. So it's a way of kind of doing a distinct. But there is a place I'm heading with this. Right now we're getting type and all the different types. Maybe we want to manipulate it a little better. So I'm still going to get from Miami, then I'm going to do a sort, then I'm going to do a group, but the ID I'm passing in is null, and the types, instead of just pushing the value or giving it the value, I'm going to say $push the type. Then at the end, I'm going to project a 0 for the ID and the types. Now what this does is it reformats it. So instead of getting all of these types, we get something like this. Although they're not unique, it's one big, oh, I'm almost there, here we go. It's one document with an array of all of these types. Now they do duplicate, so I'd like to go ahead and remove those. But again, it's just a different way of outputting data. Now, here's where I'm going with this. If I want to go ahead and do the same thing, I'm going to say, let's group by the type. This will get the unique types, then do a sort, and then continue on about our business. So by adding in that group, this now gets us the same format, but all the unique ones. This is something to look at. Again, we're doing a match, then a group to get the unique values, which a group without any other thing else on it except the ID is a distinct. Then we're going to do a sort, then we're going to do another group, then a project. Now we're almost at the last step. If I want to go ahead and, well, I think we are at the last step there, yep. Essentially, this is one big array of all of them, which could be passed down, perhaps used in a drop-down or something like that. So there are different ways of formatting your data in the database instead of just having to do a select and then format it in a different language. A lot more code can be written inside of here.